Yes, beautiful people, here we are again.
What's the
Can you believe it?
I'm mentally playing your music in my head right now. So,
Yeah, that's okay. The listeners at home are not mentally playing the music. The music is just happening right now. Isn't it dope? Don't you want to go to ZamboniFunk.com/music and check out the rest of it? I think you do. That's what
do.
My friends say again.
I definitely do if I'm not also going over to Spotify and liking and sharing and adding it to playlists and doing all these kind of things.
Or on
What?
iTunes, you can also add it to your playlist. That's what I've done.
Woo. See, this is why these friends get to come on the show. Shout out to the homies, Delicious Brian Wilkins and Melangell.
You got it. Melangell.
Yeah. Shout out to the homies. What's up, y'all? Good to see you.
Not much, my dude. Not much. It's a good Saturday morning here, but I think Melangell is having it come in. Jesus, at like 7 o'clock.
It is cider o'clock here. I'm not
Cider o'clock. Fantastic.
It's English summertime.
It's rum in my coffee o'clock here too, but that's fine.
What time is it where you are?
Like 1 o'clock.
Oh, that's not so bad.
No. The rum and the coffee earlier was the thing that probably should have been avoided, but we're here.
Indeed. Before lifting, one should put rum in the coffee.
I was laughing the other day that, like, you know how everybody has their own like lifting workout mix? You know what I mean? It's like some people over there like death metaling it out. Some people have some other like sort of like jams out. I literally was listening to a podcast, a lecture series on Plotinus. And I was like, yes.
Yeah. We've established that Justin Sledge listens to this podcast while he lifts. So
wait, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's listen, we're going to fake it until we make it in here. Okay.
I love the idea of Dr. Sledge just being like, what if magic were real? Deadlift.
Yeah, work it out. Somebody got to.
That dude's putting out some pretty serious quality content on a regular basis right now. I don't know if you guys are keeping up. He's doing like a 13-part thing on Cornelius Agrippa.
Nice. I'm going to have to get into this.
It's really good.
Yeah, check it out. Your boy is behind right now. As always, as is always the case. I've never been on top of things in my life, but one day.
I take a lot of comfort from you're right on time approach to things, because I am always out of time. Like, I am always discovering things when people are long past them. Sometimes, like, willfully, if everybody's really into something, I'll hang back until they've finished so that I can, I guess, come to my own conclusion about it. But yeah, the older I get, the less I mind being out of sync with the rest of the world, and the more I feel like I'm on my own time.
Tell me more about that. It's like you intentionally get out of sync with other people so that you can like experience it in your own way?
No, it didn't start as intentional, but as I got older, I just kind of embraced it. You know, there's a lot of anxiety around not keeping up with people, not reading the same things that they're reading at the same time. I don't know if you get this, but sometimes it feels like everyone is reading the same thing that you've literally never heard of. I feel like that.
Yes.
I've spent most of my life feeling like that. And obviously there's sort of like millennia of things to go back and read or learn about or discover. But I remember the biggest example of this is, like, I don't know if you went through this, but there was a period in my late 20s, early 30s where, like, practically every weekend in the summer, someone was getting married. And I had reached a point in my life where I knew that that was something that I maybe wanted to do, but I deliberately waited until that was all over until I took the decision, because I didn't want to feel like everyone else is doing it, so should I, you know?
I love the idea of you having like a whiteboard with all your friends' names on it. And you're like, yeah. You're calling the one friend up who hasn't done it yet. You're like, Dana, if you don't get married soon, my secret marriage I've been putting off is going to start to feel weird. I need you to pop in here, Dana. Be a team player.
Dana.
I don't know where Dana came from. She just manifested.
Yeah, get with the program, Dana.
Yeah, Dana.
Oh, I thought you were just homies with the founder of the UFC. You seem like that.
Dana White, get in here, get
Right.
that big meaty head of yours married as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah. And invite Melangell to the wedding. And so she can.
That wedding is only good if in the middle there is a cage match. Do you know what I mean? Like if there's like a spontaneous cage match event in the middle of Dana White's wedding. It's like,
I mean,
do you take this man? I do, and I take him to the ground.
This man ain't ready.
No. Oh man, you got him in the armbar. He's got a tap to commit to the, you know what I mean? Instead of saying I do, he's got a tap. Yes, he's like, do it. He's like, I'll break my arm first. She's like, do it. I didn't realize I had all these Dana White fantasies, but I'm learning a lot about myself today. Thank you, Zamboni.
That's what we're here to do. We're here to explore and discover. We've talked a lot about how desire in fantasy is an emergent phenomenon, right? It's not something that you necessarily get to decide what you want or what you like to think about. So you have to go about discovering that, oh, I guess I really want to see Dana White working it out with his husband in front of an audience of Melangell and all of her peers.
Yes.
Everybody who already got married, you know.
So when Melangell and I got to hang out in person, it was in London, and there was some, occult people, magic scene people hanging around. So it's that. But so now I'm picturing like the crowd at Watkins Books, like just like very British, very nice. In that case, largely older, occult interested people. You know what I mean? Being like, this UFC wedding is the best thing I've ever been to. Like,
So genteel.
yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
Having a plum cider.
Having a plum
Yes,
cider.
indeed. Cheers to that. Really good, by the way. I bought it on a whim. I'm feeling like it's plum season here, so I'm making the most of it.
Oh,
That's
man.
what's up.
Yeah, it's so good this time of year. Just it's been a crazy good berry season in the Northeast. So like everybody just has like my strawberry patch went crazy. The raspberries are nuts right now.
So jealous, man.
Everybody's bringing in just these like giant blueberries from everywhere, like it's so good. This year, I don't know if it's been that way across the pond there, but the season this year seems to have been really fruitful. Like the berries want to come in, or like the fruits want to like be a part of things. Not for you guys.
No, it sucked. I have high hopes for the blackberries. They're looking good, but yeah, this is like maybe the 4th or 5th day of actual summer that we've had. It's been cold, it's been raining, and I mean like that's cold and raining by Pennine standards. So today it is finally warm, and I've been doing the most English of English summertime things. I've been at a rush bearing festival watching Morris dancers outside a pub with a nice
Fantastic.
So yeah,
There's so many bells. There's just a lot of bells.
there's a lot of bells, a lot of ribbons, a lot of clogging in this part of the world. Love a good folk tradition.
I was actually just last night, not in preparation of this, just because that's where the mood took me, was watching a documentary on the creation of particularly English folk horror, right? So like digging into like what were the movements that led to like Wicker Man and Mark of Satan's Claw and Witchfinder General, like kind of like taking off in the 60s and 70s. Like why did this happen, basically? And what does it teach us about things? It's a really fun, I haven't finished it yet. It's a really fun little documentary though. But I do think, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, carry on.
No. What were you saying?
No, I'd be interested in hearing it. I was walking back along the canal having a lot of thoughts about folklore, and they actually are very similar to my thoughts about marriage. They were quite grumpy thoughts about. So
I want to hear the grumpy folklore marriage thoughts. I want to do that. What are we? Yeah,
they're not about marriage. They're just in the same way. I don't know if it's been like that over there, but in this country for the past like 10 years or slightly more, there's been like a real like massive revival of interest in folklore. And I've been really interested in folklore for a long time, but I cooled right off it when that wave started sweeping in. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about why and what was going on and what it was that was putting me off. So that's kind of what I was thinking about.
What do you think it is that's like that makes it that when the herd of people show up, particularly to something you already love,
Mm.
right? Like what is it that makes that suddenly feel off center or out of balance somehow?
Um, I think it's different for different things, but there is definitely like a signal to noise ratio. And with an increase in quality, you don't necessarily always get an increase in, well, an increase in quantity. You don't always get the increase in quality that's sort of commensurate with that, you know? But also, there's this kind of universalizing tendency in the internet. There's a kind of flattening of everything, and that can be good in some respects. But I think what makes folklore folkloric is its particularity.
Right.
Right? That it's like a relationship between place and time with ceremony, and it has to be rooted in a place and rooted in a time for it to make any sense at all. So, like, rush bearing happens in the Pennines. It's a very Pennine tradition. They take the rushes off the moors and load them up in a rush cart, and the priest comes and blesses them, and then they're traditionally used to like strew on the floor of the church. They don't do that anymore, unfortunately. But it is like a thing that is from here, and it is not a
Mm-hmm.
thing that you're going to see happening in parts of the world where they don't have rushes, for example. So you can't really flatten that into a universal or like extrapolate from that to. So there is something universal about the cycle of celebration,
Right.
but how it's rooted in place is particular, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was actually just, I don't think she'll mind me sharing a little of this. I was having a conversation about this sort of thing with Natalia just this weekend about, she was looking to incorporate some traditional European ritual elements and is in Puerto Rico and is like, I don't have a hazel wand. There's no hazel here, right? So what is the hazel of Puerto Rico? And we were sitting and thinking with
That's the
that.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. And how that part of the universalizing of like it's sort of like the festival, right? I need a thing that does the thing that hazel does, right?
Mm.
I need that. But then to say I should just buy a hazel wand from someplace in, near me, like that's not the same thing as, even if you end up having to do that, right? Like even if you end up having to realize that like, no, the relationship for this ritual is with hazel. It
Mm.
isn't transferable to other things. Going through the process of what is hazel, is there a spirit here who would like to step into that place?
Mm.
Is like that's a very fruitful process
Yeah.
to go through. But yeah, I think you're I really like the thesis you're putting forward there of like you can't just grab the particular thing and throw it anywhere and expect it to work, like it's not the same thing. I'm trying to think. So let's take the rushes for example. That's really interesting. Why
And
do
to
you
be
think?
clear for the American audience who might be like me, who is confused, a rush is a fruit. Is that right?
Oh no, it's the grass. So it's a
It's
type of
grass.
grass that grows on the like in marshy places and boggy marshy places, and it's got a spongy core. Soft rush is the particular type of grass, and when you dry it, it smells very sweet. So that's why they used to use it as like a strewing herb. And that I think is going to answer what DB was about to ask, which is like, what is the rush? Like it is the sweet smelling thing that you use to strew on the floor in summer, that kind of keeps the floors nice and fresh and lovely and insect free, I guess, through the winter.
Which the closest I can think of off the top of my mind is a kind of like there are various versions of it, but some kind of a sweet hay grass for us.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like would fill a similar kind of thing. Although with the rushes, I like that they're from the marsh and they're from the river. And we have a fair amount of plants that are similar to that. We have bulrushes and we have I'm trying to think. the size is interesting because like there's a texture component too, right? Like it can't be too small. You can't just throw like
Small, but yeah, they're also the ones that are used to weave the Bridget's crosses in Ireland. I think I'm looking across because I think I've got one, but it's like an old dried out one that I made last year. I didn't make any this year, but yeah, similar.
yeah. It's also, another problem I think for Americans a lot of times is in general American culture, the time period where we're talking about folklore and where things are coming in, unless you're talking about indigenous traditions specifically, are going to be 17th century at the earliest, right? Like that's the beginning. So it's either something that came with or it developed post 17th century. And there's so much change that happened. So like people were probably bringing in the rushes. What?
I don't know how much background noise you can pick up, but this valley is like I don't know, it picks up everything.
Oh no, I can't
There's
hear
a lot
anything.
of background noise out there. Harry.
I was just gonna say that like people were probably strewing the rushes for 400 years. Do you know what I mean? Like it could go back 800 years easily. Whereas here, that kind of tradition, like except in some of the Appalachian ranges or some of this kind of stuff, like everything was modernizing very, very quickly. Like we're right at the same time that you guys were experiencing some of your modernizations, but without the depth behind it.
I don't know enough about this, right? But this part of the world is quite new by British standards.
Ooh, I like this.
The village that I'm living in, the name of it is really old and indicates that it has been here for a very long time, right? So I live in a village called Walsden, which means the Valley of the Foreigner, i.e. the Welsh person. I quite like that.
I love, by the way, that you live in a place that's constantly calling you out. It's like, she's the reason we named it this. It's her.
It's me. It means that there were Celts living here when the Saxons arrived, basically. Zamboni, I feel so bad. This is like such a British-centered conversation so far.
Do you think?
I'll do it.
I have questions to that I want to move toward, but please continue.
I'm waiting for them. But so the bottom of the valley is a very steep valley. Top of it is moorland. It's Bronte country. It's like Wuthering Heights. Just underneath the moors, there's like this level of good farmland that has been settled for a very long time, like going back to Viking times. And then where I am, it's like the steepest part of the valley. And it was just marsh, like nobody lived here until about the 18th century, really. When they started building the canal, they drained the marsh and then they built all the cotton mills. So
very similar, actually.
Coincided with the enclosures. So a lot of displaced people coming down off the common land to work in these new factories. And that's probably where the rush bearing came from. Like they brought some of their traditions with them. And the church was like, which is where the rushes generally got strewed, was the center and like the container for all of that. But it is an industrial revolution tradition. And a lot of our folk traditions actually are.
Oh, that's really, really cool. I really like the idea that the same agents that were displacing people to come to the new world, it's an internal displacement in there, but so the community there might end up looking very similar to a community in, say, Massachusetts, where people were displaced and then worked in mills and continued, or in New Hampshire, and right around the same time period. It's really interesting. Yeah. So that's another tack there. You just said that a lot of the folklore we have are industrializing folklores, right? Like these are things of people who were migrating or leaving their homes and taking things with them and doing this sort of stuff. Why do you think it's like, do you have examples of stuff that like you're like, this is really an industrializing one?
We're gonna run right up against my reluctance to say things because I know how much more I need to read.
That's fair. You don't have to say anything. I'll make up some bullshit. It's fine.
Make up some bullshit. I'm here for that.
It's the American way.
It's the American way. One of my favorite bits of bullshit for Americans. Okay, so Americans, particularly those with any sort of Scottish descent, are obsessed with finding out their clan plaids and tartans. Okay.
Yes.
Which most of them have no idea was part of a a sort of like propaganda by the wool industry. That like the clans didn't actually, there were some colors and badges and things like that that existed from the Middle Ages for sure, but that the idea that everybody was neatly arranged wearing their own plaids and the same colors and everything else for the past 1,000 years is complete nonsense, and wasn't a thing.
And
it is fun.
So I married a Scotsman, and he has his kilt and everything. Love a man in a kilt. I mean, come on, who doesn't?
No, the kilt wearing, that's old and that's good. Like we all agree that.
But the tartan, he literally just went up the family tree until he found one that he liked. That was that tartan. And then of course you don't just get that tartan, you get like the dress tartan, the hunting tartan, the dress hunting tartan, which is like the ball that happens after the hunt, which is the one that he chose because it was nicer. And there are all sorts of permutations. You can do anything. Anything as long as it sells a kilt.
Right. Anything as long as it sells a kilt, which I think is one of the like interesting things about when people look back for authenticity in folklore, is they often try to treat it like a dead thing that has like a mathematical proof behind it.
Absolutely.
And you're like, no, man, these are the stories people were telling, and we encountered those stories at a certain time period, and there's real value to that, right? To understand what kind of stories people were telling, but they probably told it 13 different ways depending on which pub they were in at that particular night. Like it's.
So I've got two things that I want to like run past you, and I don't know which order to go down, but I'm going to start with my hot take. Okay, and I'm interested in seeing what Zamboni thinks about this as well. I've had this growing sense, it feels like everybody's talking about reenchantment at the moment, or at least in like the circles of the internet that I move in. There's a lot of talk about reenchantment, and a lot of that talk feels to me as if it treats enchantment like it's something, like it's some quality that you can sort of like pick up and carry around, or like build a container for and fill it up. And I think that enchantment is the point where we meet the world in our actions and intentions, and that actually by living as though the world is enchanted, that is reenchantment. Like you have to live it in order to experience it. That's my hot take. I've got more to say about that, but I'm interested in what other people have to say.
How you play is what you win.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's hard to do because we have a culture which teaches us not to behave in that way. And it's difficult to get past the self-consciousness barrier, I think, to begin with. So that's the whole, like, what if magic is real thing. I spent, a good 15 years of my life just like dipping my toe in that pond of like, what if, maybe, but plausible deniability, intellectual credibility. And then at some point, probably around 2020, I just thought, fuck it. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Shit. You can swear as much as you fucking want to. Bitch, I wish you would.
That was the cutest moment ever. Where you're like, wait, am I allowed to swear on this podcast? And it took Zamboni and I a minute to literally process that anything had happened. Like we were both like, what is she asking about? Oh, yes, you can swear.
I swear up and down.
Those notes for my friends who've got children who might listen,
Oh, glad you said that before I just went on my giant swear like a sailor rant that Zamboni just did. I was excited to pitch into that game. Listen, this is I listen to a podcast that says it's for adult children. Do you know what I mean? It's for people with dumb, childish senses of humor, but not for children necessarily. I would like to say this is open to all children who know when to swear, and it's not when your mom's around. That's what this is. This podcast is for. Keep you know who you are. Keep it to yourself. Wait till she leaves the room, then you can swear. It's fine.
As much as you like.
The cosmic she.
It's always mom or grandma. It's one of them. Zamboni, what do you think about so you were doing the how you play is what you win. what about teasing out a little bit of like, okay, so if we're imagining that the rest of the internet has kind of a weird off-kilter take on this, that isn't how you play is what you win, right? What is the way that people are talking about that doesn't feel quite right? You were saying it feels like it's like a commodity they can apply.
I just want to say that I'm not picking a fight with the whole of the internet here.
I am.
This is like a general impression that I've gathered over time, which might be my own skewed perception, you know? But yeah,
I'm going to fight with the internet. It's fine.
do it. I think if
That's off kilter. They've removed their kilts.
yes.
Can't have this. Got him on that one.
Had a mouthful of rum when you said that. It got me real good. Fucking puns. All right.
I'm sorry, Melangell. Please continue.
Oh, I feel like I've said enough. I think we should always beware of a slogan, right? I don't trust them. Yeah. And I think reenchantment is resistance is a beautiful slogan. But a lot of the people that I encounter using that slogan, this is going to get me cancelled by some people that I know, which is fine. It's fine. I'm waiting for it. Like, I think everybody has to go through that experience.
By the 73 people who listen to this podcast.
That's true. Yes. Including myself. So
it's enough for a good village stoning. You know what I mean? It's good.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the people I encounter using the slogan reenchantment is resistance live in a way which is very disenchanted. It's like they're waiting for it to happen to them and they're not living it
right
in what they do, you know? And there was a brilliant haunted permaculture session in Manchester with UK Steve Niner, and he said that this really stuck with me, and I think it just sort of like came through him from somewhere. He just said like freedom is what we have to create, you know, it's not going to be given to us. We create it in the ways that we live together, and that's the same kind of thing, I think. I think it's easy to like make an icon out of something and then wait for it, instead of realizing that we need to create the thing that we're waiting for. We need to become the thing that we're waiting for, you know?
Right. This is, I agree with this actually a lot. One of the things I think that is a barrier for people is we are taught to be very passive in our education. Mm. We're taught to wait, right? So that first step of like reading the Lord's Prayer backwards, going out into the woods, it's actually really, it's a really important, empowering step that I think a lot of people don't realize is what it is. And, you know, we're also taught that like changing your worldview or living a different way or doing all this kind of stuff or being aware of stuff is hard, right? It's going to be a big deal. People are going to notice. They're going to say things about, you know, and actually like I think the hard part comes later, right? I think you will encounter people who push back on you really hard. You will encounter the culture in the world trying to keep you from being free. I 100% think that will happen. But it happens because you've already been living in a free way and they start to notice and they get itchy, you know what I mean? But like you have to actually start doing it first. So I think a lot of people, they expect that acknowledging that we need reenchantment is enough for it to start working in their lives. You know what I mean? Like, because they've been taught to wait on what will arrive now. And you're like, no, you gotta start living that way. Like you gotta start doing things, but also that's not hard to do. Go talk to trees. Like,
and there's that self-consciousness barrier again. So like, trees don't talk like we do. So no. I think people who go and try to talk to trees are going to feel really silly when they sit there for a while trying to make it happen for the first time or the first 100 times. And I speak from experience here. So yeah. And I also think there's, especially now, like in this age that is so saturated with social media and images on social media, there is an aesthetics trap where like assuming the appearance of doing the thing gets conflated with doing the thing. And I'm kind of at the other end of the spectrum, and I've had to learn the power of the image and actually like forcing the world to see you in a certain way through images can be really powerful. But also just like, when does it cross over into LARPing, you know? But that's a porous boundary, because LARPing, like fake it till you make it, it works. But you have to like want to make it for it to work, you know? And then you have to be prepared to follow up when it does start working.
So
Do you? I don't know. I just said that. I don't know if I believe it.
no, I well, believe a fair piece of that. Zamboni, so like obviously like things like the astrology, things like doing the herbalism, doing these, you know, these professional things that you do, are things that people realize are weird, right? If you tell people I'm an astrologer, they have a reaction. But like, what do you think was the first thing you did that felt, or what was something you did that early on that felt like you had re-enchanted your world? Like your world felt more enchanted after doing it, but it was something that you didn't expect other people would react to, or you started getting reactions to it in a way that like, you know, so not like, you know, because obviously if I'm like, I'm a geomancer and a wizard in my business meetings, which I do sometimes, you see a like, you know, you really throw it in people's faces, but often that's not the stuff that really makes people, they just think I'm crazy then, right? That's not threatening. I'm crazy. But there's some stuff about choosing a freer life or an enchanted life that people really respond to. So I don't know if you have a story along those lines of like, or when you started noticing that your enchanted life was different than the people around you because they weren't living that way.
Sure. Well, I don't know how much I really relate to the narrative that you all have put forth so far. Because like I just don't feel like I ever really had a shot at normalcy, like just being a regular dude. Like I never really could do that. And so like you know, like for a while I was like you were asking about like some of the earliest memories of like doing weird things and getting a different sort of like outcome than other people would do. And so like I was really into samurai shit when I was in junior high, you know what I mean? So like I didn't feel no type of way about like carrying a wood sword with me and this type of shit. And I was like I was like all right at swinging a sword and that sort of stuff. I like trained for a little while on that. And so I was always just like on, like I was weird. I was just always going to be weird and didn't even realize that I was necessarily being weird. It was just like kind of who I am all the time. And so then when I hit a certain point where I realized, and then I remember, in the 5th grade, I remember the classroom I was in, and I remember sitting, I didn't like 5th grade very much, but I remember sitting there at the desk, and I realized that you could just be cool as shit. That was a choice you could make. You could just do things coolly. Yeah. And I was like, oh, why would I not choose to be cool as fuck at every moment? I'm just going to do that. And so I went about like pursuing coolness, and then I realized that other people like weren't doing that, or like didn't have a real feel for what cool would be, or like they, you know. And so in that space, I just like always, there was something about it that just like kind of flowed through me, and that has always been this way. And so so when it comes to like now I live a very enchanted life, you know, and people really notice this about me. Just yesterday, I was serving this table, and it was a regular, like a dude who I see all the time, and he cried twice during this event, telling me that I was like a special energy, and he like was really feeling the vibes and like just like loved it so. And his son come and requests to come out to this restaurant because he wants to hang out with me, and and he broke down in tears 2 times, you know, in the space of 2 hours or whatever. And so it was so like it is noticeable now that I live in a kind of vibe and energy that is enchanted in a way that people don't necessarily know how to touch necessarily. Mm-hmm. but that, and we were talking about it. He was like, how did you like sort of arrive in this place? And it's like, I don't really know. I didn't mean to, you know, like I very much have a feeling of having been chosen by ancestors and this kind of thing. So like, so I do intentionally choose to be a little weird or like out of sync with things, the way that Melangell had mentioned before, this sort of like, I'm not going to do the thing that other people are doing in this moment so as to be on my own path. And maybe because I distrust the mainstream, like if everybody's over there, then there's something I'm missing, and I maybe don't need to be over there with everyone. There's something, everyone over here is going to miss whatever's going on over there. And so I'm going to go get that thing, you know, like there's something about me that does that. But like, I don't know, like I don't know when that started, because it simply is.
First off, the world was denied by the mysteries of time and space, our great samurai sword battle. I have the boken I would carry around in high school in my, like, it's right over there. Like I go get it, you know.
That's what's up.
We used to dress up.
I don't have mine anymore.
We used to dress up in winter coats with winter gloves so that we would have some kind of protection, and then just go off into the woods and beat the ever living shit out of each other with wooden swords.
I also had that experience.
Yes. Wait, what was your? All right, so I used a boken, a samurai style, you know, practice sword. What was your practice sword?
It was a samurai style sword as well, but I wasn't committed to the way. I just liked having a sword, you know, and being in the woods.
I just love that now we're all admitting this. We're all like watching Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai, and reading the Hagakure, and like going off in the woods with samurai swords. And...
Oh no! I am nowhere near as thorough as you guys. I just like cool things. But
that's the coolest thing. Wait, that's cool. That's the like next level coolest thing you could have said there. Like, I'm not into all that. I'm just cool.
Right.
No, I think I feel like when you said
I'm not a try hard like you are, DB.
Exactly. I didn't
like,
study.
You just decide to be cool. I was like, I've been living my whole life wrong. That's changed. That's going to change today. It reminds me actually of like Always Coming Home. I bought my copy of Always Coming Home on the way back from meeting you, Brian, and it was this wonderful moment of syncs, because there was a part that I was reading that was also resonating with something that was on your podcast at the time, Zamboni. I was listening to it on the train home. But there's a moment in one of the stories where the protagonist says, I decided to become wealthy. Mm-hmm. And it's like a world where that is a decision you can make, because wealth is a sort of community thing that you can just seek to contribute to, and sort of a state that you can be in. Like, you can decide to be cool. You can decide to be wealthy.
Well, and this is some of that new world, new age, like you can think of it through a new age lens, but like enchanted world stuff that is very accessible to people and they don't always know they can. That like you really can. Not saying that this is not the thing where like the way that looks is going to look different for different people given the other circumstances you have to play with, right? But like, for example, my grandfather worked his ass off his entire career on the railroad, but he and his buddies did a bunch of strikes. They did a bunch of work. They got a really good pension. They got everything set up. He was able to put both his kids through college, and he retired early when they offered him the chance to retire early. Totally beat the system, because they always thought everybody on those pensions would die by the time they were like 70 at most, and he lived into his 90s. So, you know, so he quit work at 59. And, you know, so the last 40 years of his life was doing whatever the fuck he wanted to do. And in his case, have a motorhome and drive to the Arctic Circle multiple times. Like that was his joy. Right. But he had a house that was totally paid for. He had a wife he was in love with. He ate the food he wanted to eat. He got to hang out with his grandkids all the time. Like his wealth was tremendous. And not even like, you know, like we make the best with what we have. Like, no, he put kids through college. He never had to think about anything he wanted to spend on. You know what I mean? His tastes were not in yachts. Right. he would always say that a boat was just burn your money. He's like, he would have all these friends who were like, I'm going to buy boats. He's like, just go take a big pile of money and set it on fire. It's the same amount of joy as having a boat.
KLF moment.
But, but that is exactly what you're saying. He decided at one point, because he tried to have his own businesses and stuff too, and they tanked. It's always tanked. And so he was finally sat down and was like, I want to be wealthy. This is the path I can do it in. Right. Yeah. And then he fucking did it, but
you have to know what wealth is to you.
Yeah.
In order to like not get caught in that trap of always wanting more and knowing when to stop. And you also have to be like really aware of the paths that are open to you, because they change a lot. I think we're in a big moment of flux right now. The paths that we've always been told would work out for us, they're not going to work out for us. And there's something that I reflect on a lot is I've got a rare experience among my peers of like millennials with university education, basically, and that my life now is like way nicer than the life I grew up in, and it is way nicer than the life that my parents had back then, or the life that I could have reasonably expected to end up in. And that's like the opposite for almost everybody else I know. So there's been like a kind of leveling where we're at the same level, but they've come down and I've come up. And so it is easier for me to feel grateful and optimistic, and I don't take that for granted. I've got a dog knocking at my door. I'm just gonna go and get him.
Definitely. But I think that you can decide to be a certain way, right? But it also comes with a cost to be a certain way. Like you being cool, Zamboni, you had to give up on some things. You can't do all the things if you want to be cool. There's a way of cool, right?
Just maybe, I don't know. I didn't feel any type of way about like wearing an afro and holding the samurai sword, which like that's not how you get in the cool circles in high school. You know what I mean? Like the cool kids are not about this samurai sword lifestyle, but I felt cool about it, and so
well, and
so like, what did I give up here?
The question there then is like, who did you want to be cool with, right? Like you're talking about a lineage of, where you ended up as well. Like there's something very funk about giant afro samurai sword. I'm gonna
I was Afro Samurai before it was cool to be Afro Samurai, before it was like Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
It is cooler than cool though, because like there's a default level of cool, which at school tends to be sports. And then sometimes something happens that is like cooler than cool. Deliberate reference there.
Ice cold. All right. Okay, now ladies.
Yeah. I fucking love that.
Way to let us down, Melangell. Come on.
Am I a lady?
You over there pretending like you don't know the song.
Oh, wait, I love that. I'm just like, yeah. And Melangell's like, am I a lady? I just want to give Zamboni some sugar. I am his neighbor after all. I mean, this is the way it goes.
Here we go.
Maybe there is nothing better than like talking out Outcast lyrics as if you're having a casual conversation.
Here for it all day.
Oh man, when Marissa came to visit, she had Fresh and So Clean stuck in her head, and it was just like it would just like bop out at random moments, like we're walking around. It was like a week-long earworm.
Yeah, I have a friend who has like a mild case of Tourette's, and that was the tick for a period of like about 6 weeks. Was just so fresh and so clean.
That's so good.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I actually had a kind of interesting, like a different kind of thing where I was very much told I could be part of the culture. I was very much pushed to being the culture, right? Like, my parents very much thought that I would make an excellent senator. They fully expected me to go to law school and then begin working into state politics and work my way through things. That was the path. Which is a really interesting misunderstanding of my personality. But what happened to me was, and so I was praised anytime I walked into the standard lineup. It was like, yes, that's the path. Yes, that's the path. And the whole time I was just miserable. I was like, this does not feel correct, right? Like this, and it took me a long time to figure out why and what I was doing and everything else. And the whole time the magic was running like alongside. What I found interesting was it was actually quite a lot of effort to maintain the standard line. You know what I mean? Like to not get tattoos, to not pierce my nose, to, like that was hard actually. Like that. And so the slipping into the enchanted world for me was literally just like taking off a costume that I've been putting on for a long time and just feeling like I was free to just be myself. And I think sometimes, but that is still frightening, right? Because the society will, if you can fit, they will praise you and push you to fit, because that makes everybody else fit. And that makes everything else, you contribute to the consensus or the current reality by buying in. And if you don't buy in, that's a threat to all your peers who want to buy in.
So I think I've had a different experience to both of you that is somewhere in between. And this might be because I come across as an unthreatening person. Little do they know.
I'm terrified, so please.
So like Zamboni, I don't think normal was ever going to be an option. I had a weird childhood. I was left by myself a lot. I ran around in the woods being completely wild. That whole samurai, we used to go down the local pub because it's the only thing you can do when you're teenagers in the UK. Like dressed in just whatever the fuck. So I was wearing kind of like joggers, a random hat, a satin shirt, kind of like like a cavalier or something. Because it was a weird part of the world. And I came to realize, particularly when I went to university, it was like, oh, everybody else is wearing the same thing and behaving in the same way. So I started like trying to emulate it. But I don't think I was ever that convincing. And I remember I've actually gone back to work at a place that I was working at a decade ago, and that's where I had this realization. I was like, they already think I'm a total weirdo, even though I'm like trying really hard to come across as normal. And they still don't mind. So maybe I should just like loosen up a bit. And I think the fact they don't mind is because I'm kind of like delightfully eccentric rather than kind of like challenging in my weirdness,
This is very important. Being delightfully eccentric is a much better, easier path than being horrifically eccentric, which is another option. Like if you're going to be like the bog witch, like you could be horrifying.
Bog witch. But yeah, I'm not horrifying. I just like bugs.
Right. Yeah. And we have a lot of sympathy for bog witches on this show, right? Yep. The idea of like being out in the bog and being like, yo, fuck you to everybody who came over here. The reason I came over here in the first place is because I didn't want to deal with y'all motherfuckers and like all of that, but there's
a power in that I am still, I guess, shying away from embracing. And I want to like shout out to people like Vanessa, who is out there like embracing the full-on scary Mars stuff and doing bog witches proud. I'm just there like taking photographs of bog asphodel and hanging out with frogs, but I don't
bog witch, not bog witch. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a favorite bog where I go like after work in the evenings.
That's what's up.
Yes.
That's what's up. A lot of people out here in these streets do not have a favorite bog.
No.
You know what I mean? Out here on the witches of Instagram, they don't have a favorite bog that they go to.
And that's what's wrong. They need their bog. But I think you're
the bog on the level of the streets. You got to find out
what is the street bog?
What is the street bog?
It's the corner store.
It's slang for toilets, so don't go there.
Say more about the delightfully eccentric, Zamboni. I liked that track. Like the difference between becoming horrifically eccentric and delightfully eccentric. Like that was interesting.
Yeah, well, so It's easy once we get into a space like this where we're sort of like talking up how like witchy and weird we are, and isn't it so cool that I like live this like extremely enchanted life and I'm so cool about it. Like it's very easy to get in this space where we like sort of shit on normies a little bit. But one thing that I always think about is like I would not recommend this lifestyle. Like I would recommend free thinking, and I do frequently recommend sort of like thinking like a pirate and this sort of thing. But the idea of like bog witchery is not for everyone, you know? And it's say again?
It's not for me, I'm not gonna lie. Like I've chosen not to go that far, and I respect people who do.
Yeah, got a lot of respect for that sort of like thing, for that kind of commitment. But you know, a lot of times you need to get along with people. You need to be you know, and so like for all of my sympathy for bog witchery, I also you know, like I sometimes think about what it would be like to just be a man of his people, to just be like, you know, and that sort of like gets back to the idea of like folkloric tradition and this kind of thing, right? Like the idea that like my people have been this way and have been doing this thing for decades, generations, centuries, whatever, millennia, like who even knows, right? And so there are people who have this kind of lifestyle. I often think about like what's the for like or what's the word for Orthodox when they're Muslim?
Oh, I mean, just there's a lot of different things going on there.
Sure, when they're like capital M Muslim. But you know, like there are people who like they've got a set of rules. They follow these rules, and like and people been doing that for 1,000 years or something like this, right. And there's a lineage of doing that thing, and so I often think about that kind of lifestyle. And here I am like you know, mixed race. Who even knows what I am? And I live in a country that has only existed 200 and something years. And like, so the whole, all of it is novel for me. Like, and so I've got a lot of sympathy in my heart for like traditions like Kwanzaa and this kind of thing. Like the idea of like reenchantment means to make a new kind of folkloric tradition. But because I have to make a new folkloric tradition, I don't have a lot of tradition and ancestry behind me, like doing this thing, right? And so I sometimes, when I get into my like sad, grass is greener on the other side kind of modes, then I think about what it would be like to be a man of his people who just like is one of the guys who is expected to be a certain way, is that way, and just fits in like in that spot. I sometimes think about that and be like, there's a kind of beauty to that I don't have access to, and that I kind of wish. And so getting back to delightfully eccentric versus horrifically eccentric, like being able to move around in places where there are people who have the traditions and whatever, like this is a valuable thing. You know, like it's not like if you're gonna commit to being Shrek, then like you know, there's a difficulty in that is, I would say it's easier to be delightfully eccentric, so you can go into the shop and like hang out with the girlies who are like talking about the I don't know what they talk about in the shop, the royalty. I don't know.
I'm not gonna help you. I'm not gonna help you. I want to hear all the things you think is going on in the shop.
Yeah, they're talking about rushes, right? I don't know.
Okay, cool.
But
I think the root of all of that is community, because
sure.
you know, you don't have to have, you get this tremendous freedom in America, like, which is a horrific kind of freedom perhaps sometimes, but I think it's why a lot of the really interesting stuff about astrology, a lot just a lot of really interesting stuff happening in America. And it's because you're kind of freed from the weight of traditions to be able to turn a new lens on everything that has always happened and just say, well, what about doing it this way? What about understanding it that way? And yeah, like I really like that. And I have those grass is always greener moments sometimes too. But to make new traditions, I think what you need is community. And I think sometimes being a man of your people, it's more important to have the people than it is to sort of like fit in, because there's a lot of give and take with true community. So like being delightfully eccentric as opposed to being horrifically eccentric is just a question of give and take. So like I have a certain amount of give in me that allows that I'm willing to bend a certain way to maintain the good relationships with my community. If I wasn't willing to, and there may come a time when I'm not, you know, if I wasn't willing to, that would tip over into horrific eccentricity. But for as long as people know they can navigate a relationship with me, I'm going to be on the more delightful side, let's say. I've never described myself as delightful before. This is like new and exciting for me.
I think it fits pretty well. I actually
That's how you got on this show, is by being so delightful.
I had an actual experience with this pretty recently. So people know my magical partner, Jess Waters. She moved to New Hampshire and set up a farm up there, and is trying actively to be a part of the small town community in various ways, while also New Hampshire's a really interesting place right now because a lot of young people are traveling there. A lot of people in their like mid to late 20s. The state actually had like a 30% population growth last year in that demographic. And it's a lot of people moving to rural areas, trying to start farms, trying to work in these old towns and live differently, right? So it's very exciting and dynamic. But a lot of people too are trying to the things that cause them to find it fun to move there are a lot of these older traditions. So there at least in Tamworth, the town that Jess is in, she's making a real effort to like connect with the older people who are there, right? Rather than supplant, right? The idea is to add on to existing tradition and to shift it to a probably healthier, better thing, but not lose what was there. So we were all at contra dance. And so we're doing traditional folk dancing. Most of the people who are younger are trying to learn it for the first time. The older people are trying to put up with us trying to learn it. I adore this kind of dancing. I think it's super fun. And just because I have a reasonable partner dancing background, you show me the steps twice and I can figure it out. You know what I mean? And so I actually get to help other people. But when we came into the room, we were noticeably different than everybody else, right? Like we were, dressed to the nines. Like we brought some charisma. We brought some look. We wanted to be sexy at this party. You know what I mean? And what was interesting was how people responded. They were excited. It's sort of that moment you're talking about, Zamboni, about like the guy coming in and being like, I don't even know what it is that's enchanting me here, but I need what you're bringing. And I think this is what the delightful eccentric allows you, is to bring the joy to people who maybe need you to be the person bringing the joy. Like that might be your role as a magician in these spaces. Anyway, I had a great time. And then at the end, all the younger folks went skinny dipping in the creek, which was also super fun. That's what you should do at the end of a dance, And I was laughing that every time I get introduced to this group of friends, they see a lot more of me. The first time they meet me, it's just like me talking at a party. The next time, it's all my tattoos and piercings. But one of the guys who was there was a local who'd gone away to school in Virginia and extra stuff and come back, right? So we're driving back, and one of the people realizes, oh, I left my wallet at the dance, right? And he's just throwing on some shorts after skinny dipping. He's a good looking dude. He's just throwing on some shorts. This is not the local guy. And he's like, I'm just going to run in, grab my wallet, and come out. And the local guy who's lived there his whole life is like, oh, please put on a shirt before you go in, right? I got to live with these people. And he, this is a guy who he's a musician. He sits in with the band. He's there all the time. His reputation is much more at risk in some ways, right? And the other guy, my friend Andy, who's beautiful and has a giant mustache, and just this, and is a prince. Some people who they give off the energy of being a golden prince. This is Andy, right? Andy's like, that'll be fine. He just runs in. He came back. Women gave him a bunch of cookies. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody cared about him. They were just like, oh my God, Andy's here. And they gave him all this stuff. The other guy was really nervous about it. And I was like, the trick to living in a small town is you got to get good weird as fast as possible. Like, you can't be scary weird, right? Like, you can't be like, don't let that dude near the kids, right? But you need to be yours, or you will get pulled in by what everyone else thinks you should do. Like, the gravity well of everyone else's judgment will hit you unless you leap into the delightfully eccentric. Like, just throw yourself into that. It's one of those things I was like, dude, you should just wear like a tailcoat in town all the time. Like, you should dress like an 18th century squire or some shit.
Oh my goodness, there's a couple in town who two dudes, right? One guy is German, like Bavarian, and he wears full-on lederhosen. They go for like promenades in their Sunday best. They go to church and then they go for a promenade afterwards. And his husband is like this, like at least a foot taller than him, Nigerian, constantly dressed up to the nines in the way that Nigerian guys often can be.
Yeah,
and two of them together are just like, and it is like a small town in the north of England. They stick out like a sore thumb, but in the best way. Everyone is so happy to see them.
But I think the deeper point here is it has to be charismatic. It has to be beautiful. It has to be delightful, and
you have to not mind being looked at.
Yeah. But so and this also leads me to think about a man of your people, right? Like, to some extent, Zamboni, you're a man of the people that will be there in 200 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're well, I hope so. But the thing is that, like, sometimes being who we are for the communities we're a part of requires us to be the weird ones now, requires us to carry that and listen, if those guys in your town stopped doing that, if they just started dressing real beige, they would lose some status. There would be a real problem. Like, not necessarily they would encounter more problems because they've given themselves a role in the community, and people are like, oh, it's those guys. Those guys are great.
They're like flowers.
Yeah.
We'd notice if they went there, like blooming.
Right. And so it's this interesting dance. Like, delightfully eccentric is probably better, allows you to interact with the community, allows you to give gifts to the community in a really nice way, allows you to take gifts from the community. People will ask you out, but it does require work. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, like, Zamboni, if you stopped being enchanting, that guy at work would be like, what the fuck? Like, he would stop coming. Right. So it's an interesting thing. I just tend to think it's actually, once you step into it, it's actually great. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually really great. But
this is an interesting way to think about it because, like, I remember we went to the plant cutting conference last year, and I think that's happening right now.
Like next week or something. Yeah.
Maybe it's next week. Yeah. It's happening in your neck of the woods, But so there we were in rural New York, right?
Yeah.
And that is, I look much more like Brooklyn than I look like rural New York. In rural New York, you notice me immediately, right? And so one of the things that I noticed that I like got on board with immediately was there you wave. So people are driving by, you wave at them. You're driving by, you wave at them, and the people who we were there with were all transplants. They were people from cities and from like around the way, and they're like cunning and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so they're like internet wizards, same sort of situation, right? But they the first day that I got there, people were like telling hilarious stories about how important the waving is. Like people will wave when it's very clear that they could not see you, but they heard you driving by and they put their hand up so that they're facing the other way. They're like head first deep in the reeds and they can't but they waved at you. Right. And so people would tell these like sort of funny stories. And then we were having this very conspicuous conference where a bunch of weirdos were hanging out there, and throughout the whole time, I made sure to wave at every truck that passed by. I made sure to wave at them. And what you said to me, Brian, was like, "Oh yeah, you're like making good with the land spirits," and that's exactly what I was doing. Is like we're in Rome right now, and so let me do what the Romans do, and like let me be in that kind of space, and that is kind of like. Thinking with Reenchantment, it sort of makes me think about in the first chapter, I think, of Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, she talks about becoming indigenous. And so it's this idea of like, so, if we are people who are post-colonial and we live in the kind of like lives that we live, and so we don't have access to indigenous tradition and this kind of thing, then there's a necessary process that we as people need to go into, which is to sit on country, on the land, and to be with land and plants and the space and sort of like become a part of the land and understand where the land is and where the land is in relationship to itself and all of this, like in order to become part of that. And so you don't necessarily need to learn what it is to be Potawatomi, and which is what her tradition is, but you need to know what the land needs of you. And in order to so in order to re-enchant, what we really are going to do is to become a part of this place and time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that is folklore at its best, is an expression of place and time. That's what it should be. And I think the reason I don't like some of the internet expressions of folklore is because it creates a distance where you're just a spectator of an interesting curio. And it's like, no, if you enter into this, like fully enter into it, collect the rushes, get them blessed by the priest, it's bilberry season, go and pick some bilberries, that kind of thing, then you're entering into that relationship with time and place.
It's a good point. Again, we're sort of gently sharing with people that like the receptive thing you've been taught, right? I will sit here and knowledge will come to me. I will watch TV and things will entertain me. I will go to a show and the musicians will perform for me. Like, this is the trap. Mm-hmm. You need to go outside. You need to gather the berries. You need to do these things. You need to
participate.
You participate. If you go to a show, you need to be giving enough energy to that people on stage that they feel it. Like, I used to have a horrible experience when I was in churches. And it wouldn't happen all the time, but like you would go to some churches where no energy is being given back to the choir, right? Like the choir is desperately bringing the spirit in as hard as they can, and the crowd is sitting there just like nothing. And it felt awful every time, right? Like, whereas, and I'm not even talking about people actually clapping or getting up or singing along or doing this kind of stuff. There can be a very reverential space sometimes where it's very quiet as well. But the energy, the intensity of the emotions of the crowd were going right back up to the choir. And you could feel that the choir was lifted by that. You know what I mean? It was a shared moment. And I think it's a space where you can just show up, or you can bring something to it. You know what I mean? And that bringing to it is important.
I am so glad that you brought up the choir. I was hoping we were going to be able to talk about singing while Melangell was on the show. This is what I've been waiting for this whole time. So I'm going to tee you up a little bit, but when I think about choirs, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there with choirs, right? There's sound that happens. There's breath that happens. Whenever we're dealing with sound, then we also have not just the sound of the voice, but also the sound of the room, the room, the container, the space sounds a certain way. If you sing outside, it sounds very different from if you sing in your bedroom, which sounds very different from if you sing in a cathedral. These things, they sound like the space participates in the whole dynamic as well. And then we can think about like the idea of breath. We are sort of all sharing the same air. The choirs are breathing, and then the pupil is the word that came to my mind. The people sitting in the pews, the people listening.
The pupils.
Yeah,
the
right.
Pupils is so good.
That wasn't the one. Y'all know what I mean. Sure. Yeah, that's. Yeah, the congregation. They're breathing the same air, right?
Yes.
And with the spittle and all that, we're in it together. You know what I mean? It's like kind of gross, but that's part of what it is to be in a human body, right?
Yep.
And so it's an important sort of situation. And I know that Melangell, you've been sort of like exploring this idea of voice and creation and art and magic. And so I'm really interested in where you sit with all of this these days.
Yeah, I've been finding my voice. It's been interesting. So I think like a while ago, I know we messaged about this, maybe like 2 years ago, you and I did an intention together, and it was for our voices to grow. And I can't remember, it was like beauty and strength or power and beauty or something. And I just joined the local town choir, like a choral society. And it's one of these big, like industrial mill town choral societies. They sing Handel's Messiah in the town hall every year, and they always have for as long as the town hall has existed. And it was a big thing for me. So I'm Welsh, and I grew up in a culture which really values singing. So I got taught how to do it. And I got press ganged into the choir like everybody did. So I got some background, but I'm not like, I hadn't sung for about 20 years. And I wasn't sure that I had it in me. And I did. And that was amazing. And just the feeling of being surrounded by other people all singing in harmony was like so powerful. This is just coming out of lockdown. I cried like a baby. And then I cried again when we got to the final of the Amen chorus, and it was just like lovely. But recently, so I've been on this whole journey, and I have become a member of the choir / female cantor in an Orthodox church, but it's like a Western Orthodox church, which is very rooted in like Gregorian chants and things like that. So that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. And it's a restored 5th century liturgy. I'm going very niche here. And the guy that restored it, he's sort of a saint now in the tradition of this church, Saint John of Saint-Denis. French dude. Well, actually, he was Russian, but he came across to France, and there's this whole story behind it, and it's very weird and entangled, and I can get into more of it as needed. But his icon is up there. And before I start singing every week, I go up and I venerate his icon, and I basically ask for his help to sing the liturgy that he restored. And honestly, like, I don't think I could do it without that, because sometimes it's just a process of like getting out of the way. You know, like if I was consciously trying to remember everything I was doing and following the music, which I don't read very well, I wouldn't be able to do it. Sometimes it's just a case of like allowing it to happen through me and just being open to it. And being open has been the biggest challenge to me, because like I'm quite shy, and the first thing that happens is this, and that strangles your voice. So yeah, I don't know if I can put it into words, but I've been on a bit of a journey with voice.
I really love the necromancy at work here. So the
Get me told off.
the moment of the veneration, right? So you're going to, and you're asking this saint to help. But this is the person who, through the necromantic art of writing, you know what I mean? Like provided the physical material that allows you to bring in this spirit that he was bringing in. You know, it connects you through the text, through everything else. But that text is an invocation of the breath. It's saying, breathe here, sing this, do this, right? Like, it's so physical, to Zamboni's point. Like, it brings in all the voices that have tried to sing this, all the voices that have done it are now invoked and made present and incarnate in the act of your own breathing and your own singing. And I love the conscious touch to invite that, right? Like, that's going to happen regardless, because that's the way that this kind of communal singing works. But to say, please do sing through me, right? Please do use my voice. It's so, I don't know, talking about like tradition and creating new things and connecting back, as you say, a restored 5th century idea. Yeah, there's gaps. There were gaps where people weren't singing this liturgy 100%. Like, the church told people not to sing this liturgy at some point. It broke up. But it's reaching back behind it and making it physical, not just real, but in the bodies again, which is so really exciting with that.
And connected with that, the first thing that I sang with the town choir, after our intention, I was like, I'm going to need to call in more help. So I did a little like invocation of the ancestors, and I prayed to them, and I was like, I know some of you are in choirs. Some of you have probably sung this. Can you kind of lend me a hand? Help me out here. And as we were getting ready, there was a lovely old lady whose name I can't remember, but she came up to me, and she was one of the altos, so they normally sit at the opposite side from us.
Altos? An alto, you say?
We do love altos on this show. They're welcome to slide into my DMs at any moment. Follow your heart, feel how it feels for you.
Granny's welcome.
As embodied as you like.
I'm having this juxtaposition of two mental images that shouldn't go together.
That was the point.
Should is a big word here.
Should.
You're right.
We're going to let the altos decide what should and should not go down in my DMs. Thank you.
Please return to your beautiful story, Melangell.
Well, she came over and said, you're Melangell. I wanted to come and say hello to you because my grandparents were Welsh, and I am actually using my grandmother's score that she used to sing from back in Wales. And I just thought that was a really nice little connection. And I was just like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
That's
these
beautiful.
little messages, these little things come through.
Word.
It's one of those like, you kind of invite the meaning. This is about like living that enchanted life as well, because there's always like a tipping point. You're always on that knife edge of like the conspiracy meme guy,
Yes. I very much try not to be that dude.
I know, but like if you start explaining the relationality between all of these different things and where the meaning resides and the enchantment resides, then you end up being that guy. You can't really capture the connections without sounding kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've definitely talked about that a fair bit on this show, and it's we called it the language of the angels on the last 2 shows ago, something like this, where we were we were talking about auditory hallucinations and the idea of like being able to understand whatever meaning is there until you look at it, until you like sort of like try to describe it, and then as soon as you try to describe it, you like turn into this guy, and then like and that's not really but it's like before that it was like it all made sense, it was all together and made. But you made a face at me just now. You had something to say, please.
Me?
Yes, you. Language of the angels.
Angels, man.
Yeah, fucking weirdos. All right.
If you had a direction, say, buddy, go on. I have a follow-up to Language of the Angels eventually. But yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to talk about singing some more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do it.
Because I think that singing is actually a really, really important tool for reenchantment. there's a couple of things there. One, say again.
Literally the word enchantment, enchant,
Enchant,
Uh-huh. Yeah. You see where I'm going with this, right? So chant is to sing, right? And so to chant into or to sing into is what enchantment is. And so this speaks to the idea of like the voice being inside of you, and then your lungs and your chest becomes a resonating chamber for the vibration that then goes on to like and everyone can participate in it together. And it's like and even if you're not singing, then you're still awash in the sound, and that gives you a kind of participation. But coming to your point earlier, Brian, the idea of like being only receptive, especially because we live in a civilization of specialists, is a really big deal here, right? So, and this sort of like is kind of a problem with the bog witch as well, like the idea that like only the bog witch has access to witchery, when in fact there's capacity for enchantment inside of each of us already, right? There's that sort of thing. But then also Michael Jackson is so good at singing and dancing that no one wants to sing and dance anymore, because you're not going to be, because unless you're going to be Usher, like, right. and on that kind of level, then like maybe I'm going to leave this to the pros, And so then that becomes an issue. And so I always talk, is it an African proverb? If you can walk, you can dance. If you can talk, you can sing. And so I get into that all the time. And I tell people that all the time. And then they're like, yeah, fucking you can. Because I do these things professionally, So, but the part of the reason why I'm at the like level of talent and capacity that I have is because I always believed those things. I just never believed that I couldn't do it. I was just always like, oh yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And I come from a church tradition where it was like everyone is singing. Like, no, what do you mean you're not singing? Like that's what we're doing in this room right now. Everyone is singing.
That's the purpose. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's that gets to the participation element, which is so important, but then also the idea of voice, like what even am voice, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to sound and vibrations and this kind of thing. And then Melangell, you said that you have been finding your voice through this process, right? And so there's something there about like coming into a greater understanding of like how my larynx works. And then there is also the idea of like finding my best way to express myself. And then there's also the capacity of breath that is important here. And all of that sort of like sits in this one place of like, I'm finding my voice through singing with other people. That is like crucial.
And experiencing myself as an instrument, like experiencing my body as an instrument that can produce music, it feels amazing.
There's something here I really love that just sort of flashed for me, which is we often talk about the process of the tension between individual understanding of yourself and your community responsibilities, your community connections. And a choir is a fantastic way to both metaphorically understand, but also actually practice this, because your own voice has to be created, maintained, understood, your own deepened. You have to work on your own special sound, right? And what you bring to people. But then all of these different voices in concert bring together a new sound, right? They have to work together too. But because I've been in a lot of bad church choirs where they're just throwing up whoever's willing to stand up there. There's no instruction, you know what I mean, for the people who are there trying to try. And they get, they just have whatever voice they've managed to crack out for years and no one's helping them, right? And it does not sound good. Does not
That's
sound
why I couldn't
good.
be in the youth choir when I was a kid. I was like,
It's
put
rough.
me in the adult choir, please.
Right. But when you foster people's voices, when they do grow in their own voice, one choir will, you could have this idea, again, universalizing, right? That one gospel choir sounds like every other gospel choir. They do not. They do not, because each of the voices in, are they all gospel choirs? Yes. But each of the voices in that thing is essential to making up the nature of that particular choir at that time and place and at that moment. And so, anyway, I was just struck by the beauty of choral practice in terms of both your individualizing understanding of yourself and your sharing with the community. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you can pick out a single voice, like an individual voice, when a choir is singing in harmony, that individual is kind of getting something wrong, you know?
yeah.
This
It's
brings me
definitely
back to
more
the.
than the sum of its parts thing. And
This,
there's Zamboni, you'll totally get this. Because I don't know if we were recording when you started talking about your music, but there's a pre-verbal language that you can enter into with people when you're making music with them, where you can feel out the vibe that's happening between you. And I absolutely love and I don't do it anymore, but I used to play guitar and I used to just jam with people, and there is nothing like kind of just jamming with people and seeing where it goes, and you're both following this thread, or like all of you in that moment are following this thread of music that is between you and more than you, and it's a whole different level of communication and interaction and into being, you know. I miss that.
pre-verbal is a really interesting way to think about that. You were not finished. Please continue.
No, I was just muttering to myself about how I need to pick up my instruments again.
Yes, agreed. You do. Picking up instruments is a tough thing to do. I just bought a piano for my little niece. She's gonna be 10 pretty soon, and she
They're
needs
heavy,
to
so
say what?
I said they're heavy. It was a bad joke.
Oh yeah. Ha
Yeah.
ha ha. Well, this is not a piano, it's a keyboard. It's very light. She can pick it up. She's 10. No problem. But she needs to like learn how to do that. And then I had a bit of a falling out with the piano teacher who I was going to send her to. And so that means that I now need to learn how to play the piano. So here we go.
You just got to stay one book ahead of where she is. That's all.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I need one lesson. I need one lesson ahead of where she's at. And that's gonna last, ideally, in the ideal situation, that's gonna last like 2 more weeks. So like I have a music theory background that she doesn't have, and so I have an understanding of how the instrument operates. But like ideally her hands will be better than mine
Yeah.
very soon. But I was going somewhere. Who knows? Lost to the
Pre-verbal.
winds.
Pre-verbal.
Pre-verbal. Oh, sure. Yes. Pre-verbal is a really interesting way to think about the language of music in general, right? Because music, I always think of music as a language. And I don't know what it says exactly, but I know that it says stuff. And that's why I listen to it so hard, because they say stuff, and I'm like, I really understood that, even though I don't know what I understand. And so I wonder if this ties back around to what you were going to say earlier, Brian, about the language of the angels.
Oh, it does. It does. It's a really smooth transition, actually.
Bring it on.
So Melangell and I had a conversation not too long after that thing about language of the angels, and also about the concept of the Awen and the bards who
Yeah.
the bar, and you can correct me because you sent this to me, but the bardic tradition of standing, going into the place where the languages happen, the things beyond what we can understand, out of time, out of sync, the divine mind, however we want to name that other place, with the intention of bringing something back, right? With the intention of bringing back a way into that experience. It may not be the exact language that was there before, but the tradition of doing that, and you know, one of the great things about poetry in that connection is that it was often sung, for one thing. It wasn't really spoken in the way we think of it now often. And even in the sort of more Anglo-Saxon tradition, it was certainly chanted, right? It was certainly like rhythmically spoken in a way that involved the breath and the tone. And so I was just thinking again, like we had gone onto a really interesting thing of like, what does it mean to seek that out, right? To be the person who will, what does it take, right? To be the person who will put themselves in the other space, but is committed in that community sense to not just coming back mad, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the amount of training and work it takes to like, yeah, I went, but if I come back and I'm just, as you said earlier, I'm just murder string man.
Horrifyingly eccentric.
Yeah.
Right.
It's no longer, yeah. If you come back monstrous, right?
But that's a real risk. That's the old traditional saying about going up Cadair Idris, the mountain in Wales, is you either come back dead, mad, or a poet. But that's like it doesn't have to be Cadair Idris, but if you go to that place, you know, you have to go with care. And Zamboni, I could see by your face that something was coming up for you there, because I think it was something you said about standing outside time almost, that made me think about the bardic tradition, and then that's how I got into this conversation with Brian.
Well, there were a lot of threads to pull on there. One was coming back monstrous. This is very interesting. This is very, very interesting because bog witches will know that there is a relationship to monstrosity that we are not going to eschew out of hand.
Right.
You know?
You need a relationship with it. Yeah.
Right. And and it's worth thinking with what monstrosity is, because there's a way to think of monstrosity. Monstrosity is a lot of things, but there's a way to think of it where it is it's chimeric. It's the sort of like taking the two things and then making them into the one thing. So you've got your human body with the elephant head and the duck feet. I think I mentioned one time as like as a pretend astrological imagery. I think the first time I said that, I was trying to think of I think Cancer 3, the Deccan has a man with elephant feet.
Yeah.
But I had said elephant head already, and I was like, all right, so here we go.
Talk about those
top
feet.
Heavy it is. So
it's duck feet. And I'm getting an image of ducks with elephant heads constantly going.
The good thing is ducks do real good with that motion. They don't mind that at all.
No, that's good duck.
Down we go. Right. So monster is the chimeric thing. Right. It's the sort of like it's the hybrid of the things that don't go together. And so there's something monstrous about that I think is really interesting. And so if we like get into this idea of like you go up on the hill, I didn't what was the name of this person who did that, Melangell? You mentioned a tradition that I'm not familiar with.
The bardic tradition, and there's a concept called awen, which is like flowing spirit, divine inspiration. So the bard goes to the place of the awen and sort of channels it through their bardic poetry, basically.
Sure. Okay. And was there somebody who did this? Babbity Rabbity?
No. He's trying to get the name of the mountain.
The archetypal bard in Wales would be Taliesin. There's a couple they're called the Cynfeirdd, which is like the old bards, or the before bard of the old times. And Taliesin is kind of like it's kind of like the archetype, I guess. There's a lot of material which is ascribed to him that there may or may not have been a dude called Taliesin who wrote it.
Gotcha.
He was trying to ask about the name of the mountain.
Oh, the mountain. Yes, it's called Cadair Idris. Do you guys have like Idris ginger beer?
No.
No. Oh, that doesn't help you then, does it?
Nope.
What would be
Idris Elba?
Idris Elba, we do know
there
in
you
this
go.
house. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
It's just a Welsh word that means chair, so it's like the seat of Idris. Idris' seat. I don't know who Idris was, but the mountain is his seat.
I'm just imagining now as Idris Elba's seed, which would
Yeah,
inspire quite a lot of poetry, at least from me.
I would love to read that.
Uh-huh. Just sit wherever you like, sir.
Sit wherever you like, sir. Can I bring you some ginger beer or other fine
Right.
concoctions that you would like?
Indeed. Okay. So,
Wabbity Wabbity is still killing me. I'm sorry. All right.
that's a Harry Potter reference. This shows you how much British shit I know. I don't not very much. But
all right, we're good.
so sorry. I know that that's deeply offensive to all of the British people, including the one who I'm currently sitting with. I'm so sorry. I'm doing my best. My best is not very good. But so anyway, so I'm trying to talk about monstrosity right now. So you go to the seat of Idris and you like have this sort of like experience, this potentially horrifying, terrifying experience where you're like taken out of everything that you think is real and taking it out of time, and then given this thing, and then you come back changed. You come back in a different shape than you were before. And I don't know what it is in the bardic tradition, but I do know that in a lot of the American indigenous traditions, you generally come back with a song. So there's a song that the divine has given you, and this song, when you sing this song, it has a particular effect. So it's like a spell, basically. And a lot of them are going to be like healing songs or these kinds of things that'll like heal a particular kind of ailment. It's like, oh, this guy's got the weird ear thing. Like we gotta call Babbity Rabbity up and he'll come and sing the song, and then he comes to sing the song, and it like helps the ear situation out because he's the ear specific
dude. He's the ear wizard. He's the ear wizard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That as you were saying it, I thought of the word ordeal, because when I was a weird child, I was like obsessed with like Arthurian knight stuff, and the knight has to like go through an ordeal and it's usually just like them alone in a chapel for a night, which never seemed like it was that horrifying until like I became an adult and was like, a night alone with my thoughts, you say? We'll be in there.
Wait, you mean just me?
Yeah.
Nobody else around here? I don't know how this feels.
But it's a similar kind of thing. It's like if you can do that, like if you can face down, however we're going to characterize it, and return, then yeah, you've kind of passed the test, I guess.
I feel like there is that sense of coming back with a song, though. That's actually really interesting. Like coming back with a poem, coming back with the words, right? Like whatever the message, the prophecy, the thing, like you do come back with a way of sharing, a way of saying what happened there.
And melody. And like part of the song bit, I think melody is important.
I certainly think that like it's sort of what poetry is for, right? Like you can't say what it is square. You can't just be like, your ear is good. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work like that. It's not translatable in that same way. You need the song. You need the thing to make it the bridge between the two. It's really interesting. That's another good example of the like universalizing. We come back with a song, particularities. Over here, it takes this shape. This tradition looks this way. Over here, it takes a different shape, you know. But we do need to get people going back and forth and coming back with songs, or else we're fucked, you know. Like,
I had this experience that I'm kind of reluctant to share because I haven't really lived up to it, right? But I've spoken to Brian about this. I had the opportunity to go to Australia last year, to Western Australia, and I had to spend some time coming to terms with, I had the great good fortune to travel to some amazing places that I never particularly wanted to go to. And I spent a little bit of time like learning how to be grateful for this opportunity. And I read Santok, I got really into Tyson Yunkaporta, I read a lot of really good books about Indigenous ways of thinking and being in the world. And I think I got ill around the same time. So I just had a fever and I was reading lots of books and having lots of weird dreams. And one night I dreamt about a mountain, and I woke up with this word in my head, just like, this is the name of a place. So I looked it up, and I learned that this mountain that I dreamed of was a place where people would go for rites of passage, for like initiation into adulthood. And I was going to be there on my 40th birthday, which felt like a big deal. So I was like, I'm going to go to this place. And I went there, and I kind of opened ceremony, and I was just there with the mountain for a bit. And I got this really strong message of like, cool, you're here. This isn't your place. What you need to do is to like go back to where you're from and find the version of this place where you're from and learn what that can teach you. And that's why I go to my bog all the time, because that kind of is the high place where I live. That's above my house. It's like on top of a hill, and there's this amazing outcrop of rock there called the Basin Stone, which has got its own interesting history. And that's like the local high place, I guess, where I sit. But I don't feel like I've necessarily like learned the lessons. But to almost be like told by the mountain that I need to like go and find my own mountain felt resonant, you know.
It's
I
a
can't
really
just go and have like an Aboriginal rite of passage in like Western Australia.
It's a really lovely story, actually. Also, for my geomancy nerds, that's the most Fortuna minor thing that can possibly happen. Of I have this opportunity to go to these great places that I'm not sure I want to go.
That's my life, man.
That's the best. That's the best Fortuna minor.
I have so
But-
many like nice things happen to me that I never asked for. That I need to like learn to feel grateful for.
But I would say I'm gonna do a horrible thing to a Welsh person. I'm gonna offer some mild compliments. This is going to be very difficult for Melangell. But I will say that because I just know I know your story, and I'm not going to tell too much of it. I will say that since that time, you have connected to other important patrons. You have followed a different path. You have changed what associations you've had. You've gotten deeper into community where you wanted to be. Like you have legitimately done the things that that are part of that process. And the reason I mention that is not just to compliment you, which I know you hate, but is also to say that that's sometimes what it looks like. And I think sometimes it can feel weird, right? To say like, I had this incredibly magical experience and I'm not sure if I've learned the lessons. That's a legitimate feeling a lot of the time. And I think one of the things
you need a community. You need to bring it back to the community, because I don't know,
Right.
I can't see. I'm in the middle of it. So yeah, that's really meaningful actually to get the feedback. I wish there was a better word for it, but that feels musical enough. So,
No,
yeah.
and I think that's part of it is that, yeah, exactly. The community needs to be there. And this is what, as community members, we need to do for each other too. You were saying earlier, Zamboni, that like, not everybody needs to be the bog witch. You know what I mean? And I actually do firmly believe not everyone needs to be a witch in the way that we are all witches, right? This is not actually a path for everyone. The difference is, and I'm not trying to be like, I'm special. Like, I am not meant to be a carpenter, dudes. Like, please, what I want in an enchanted world is for every carpenter to know that the intention they put into their work is magic. That the prayer of don't fuck up now, which is a very much a prayer when you're talking to the wood, is its own magic. And real carpenters have the magic of that art in them. We just happen to be a collection of people who part of the art we do is the magic art, right? Like it's sort of like the meta art that's happening. And that's not for everybody, but there's something important about how we shift that place. So sometimes I used to refuse to join choirs at churches. I have a good choral voice. I have a good strong baritone. I can read music. I can sing. I like doing it. So the moment I entered a church, a music director would be like, "Come sit in the choir," and it's like, "No, I want to be in the congregation." Because if no one in the congregation is singing or doesn't feel strong in their singing, the choir doesn't get everything they need. There were other people whose calling was the choir, right? Some of us have to be the congregation sometimes. And I think in our community, sometimes we are the bard going back and forth. And sometimes we're the congregation saying, thank you for going and thank you for sharing. And we need to sort of alternate, even amongst the wizardy folks, we need to kind of alternate who has gone and who is receiving back and who is saying thank you and who is moving in that space. It's a dynamic relationship. The other piece I wanted to play with Monster for a second. I love what you said about being physically changed, Zamboni, because I think people see it in you. Like you don't get to go and come back and be the same. But the word monster also has the word monstrance, to show.
Oh yeah.
You are the demonstration. You are what it looks. You become the message you received. And sometimes some people go fully that way, and they are just showing that full, sometimes frightening nature of the other side, and they can't pull back from that, and that's hard, right? But I like to think of those of us who become delightfully eccentric or deliciously eccentric as carrying that other nature all the time too. Like I think it does change you. You people pick you out. Random people at like if I take public transit, someone will sit next to me and tell me what they need. They will tell me their story. They will ask for my help. And I tell this to other people, and they're like, I never have that experience. I put my headphones in, I look down, and no one ever talks to me. I'm like, I don't understand what that life is like. Like, I had on work calls, I have people who begin telling me their personal stories. In the middle of a Zoom call with 13 other people there, they begin confessing what they did with their partner last night. Now they need help. You know what I mean? Like we get changed, and you know, and so I think if we try to pretend that we're not showing, we're not acknowledging the mission.
Yeah, and I think freedom means like knowing that monstrous nature is there and just being able to calibrate where you are in relation to it.
Right.
And like true freedom means nothing is unthinkable, nothing is out of the question. What matters is that you're choosing to take the path that you're taking. And I don't know, I mean, like, let's have a sort of 18-year-old hot take kind of philosophy discussion about like what is freedom. But
it was the Matrix.
Yeah,
actually.
The Matrix.
Uh-huh.
If I told you.
Yeah, well, at the end of the Matrix, he's like fighting a bad guy, and he like keeps getting up, and he's like clearly losing the battle. Neo's losing the battle, and Agent Smith is like, "Why do you keep fighting?" And Neo's like, "Because I choose to." And then that like destroys the whole Matrix.
Yes.
Oh man.
Go back and watch that film.
I have a favorite bull rider. He just had to quit because he broke his neck.
This is the second time you've talked about this guy on this show.
I fucking love JB Mooney. He's a king. But they were asking him how he was so tough during his whole career, and his answer relevant to this was, he's like, I decided to be. I just decided I was going to be the toughest motherfucker on the range, and so I was. Like, you know, and he's like, the toughest motherfucker doesn't. He walks off. There's video. This dude's the career-ending injury he had. He got thrown off a bull. His neck breaks. He stands up and walks off the arena. The doctor said they do not understand how he could have stood up, that it was physically impossible. And I'm like, you say physically impossible, but I'm looking at a tape of this dude getting to his feet and very calmly being like, he gets on the way, you can see it. The guy's trying to harness the bull. They're like, you okay, JB? And he's like, I broke my neck. And then he walks to the next guy, and the guy's like, you need anything? He's like, you should probably get the paramedics because I broke my neck. And the paramedics come over, they're like, what's wrong with you? He's like, I broke my neck. And they're like, oh shit. And they like panic, and he's like, you guys should put a splint on it because I broke it, you know? And then the last thing before they take him to the hospital, by the way, is his buddy comes up. He says, is there anything I can get you, man? He's like, no, I'm good. They finally put the splint on. You know, he's like, I broke my neck, but, you know, what are you going to do? And the guy's like, you want a cigarette? He's like, oh, shit, yeah, they're not going to let me have that at the hospital. So there's him in a neck brace fucking burning down a cigarette, you know, because he's the toughest motherfucker who ever lived because he decided to be so, you know. And by the way, he's a fucking monster, you know.
Yeah. The commitment, you know, that like you sacrifice a lot to become the toughest motherfucker.
Yeah, he's got more surgeries. He can't remember how many surgeries he's had.
Yeah, the commitment is an important part of the choice, I think.
Yes.
And you know, like, because it's you know, it's Michael Jordan also. It's the same sort of situation where it's like, I am fucking winning. You're not, I don't care about anything else. I'm getting these rings. Like, and then he makes that decision and then goes and does that thing, right? It's that same sort of situation. And so I don't know what to think about that necessarily, except because like I've been talking about it as if it's involuntary. You know, like you sort of like get to the top of the mountain and then you have this harrowing experience and then you come back and you like can't not be a monster after that. Like it's too late. Here I am, right? But there's an element here of like you also have to commit to. I almost said monstery, like mastery and monstrosity all at the same. You gotta like commit to that shit. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
So I'm wagging my finger because I'm going to push Melangell to answer this because I think she's actually done some of the commitment. Like you joined this Orthodox group, you know what I mean? Like that's
I get baptized in September, so I'm still at the maybe I won't, I will, but you know. Yeah, I'm a commitment phobe. And yet here I am married and about to join myself to like the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Having not grown, unlike you guys, I was like a godless child. So yeah. Commitment has come late to me. And I think that's, you know, I'm a child of Mercury. I dance around things. I don't ever fully commit. So this has been a new experience and I don't know. But you can doors close when you commit, but the way deepens. So yeah, it's interesting.
There's something there of like, yes, it's involuntary, but again, the shape you take, the commitment to the shape, like what happens with it, that part is voluntary.
Angel stuff as well.
Yeah.
It messes you up because it feels like everything's already happened, and that makes it feel inevitable, and that makes it feel inescapable. So yeah, you start tangling with angels, and I've just had a whole year of experiences of just like, oh, this is what that was about. I don't think I'm going to be doing that again in a hurry, but it's been interesting. It's got me where I needed to be. I'll say that.
I'm not going to ask Zamboni to do a lot of editing. I'm going to ask if we can tell this story just in case. But would you tell the story about what happened to your like Instagram feed with the birds?
Oh my goodness, yeah. At one point, I think I asked for help to just stop messing around on Instagram so much because it was a really good time sink and I was just sort of like zoning out with it. And every other reel that I watched was just some weird Arabic bird meme, bulbuli. And if it wasn't that, then it was Emmanuel Macron wishing me a happy Friday with like funky disco music. But like, yeah, it was just like nonstop, like weird, like, you know, there'd be a guy playing golf and he'd hit the ball and the ball would turn into like this big flowery Arabic bird meme. Or, you know, somebody would be pouring coffee and the coffee would turn into this giant Arabic bird meme. And it just became unusable. Like I literally couldn't go on Reels anymore because all I was getting was Arabic bird memes. And I don't know where that came from. Except I literally asked for it.
It is literally the most angel response to a problem I've ever come across. Here's the other thing. I've lived on the internet for a very long time. I have never seen this shit. And not only that, I delve into some weird Arabic shit. Like I like the weird Arabic shit. I like the algorithm has every reason to feed me these bird memes. I have never seen them. I didn't even know this was a thing. And when she reached out, she's like, "Do you think this could be the angels?" I was like, "I don't know what else it could be. This is some wild." And it was always like a bird, and it was like, "I love you, Habibi." Like it was always this
like little
so
kind
weird.
of tweets and hearts and sparkles. It was
And the reason I love this in this context too is you're talking about like how the angel stuff can make you feel crazy. And it's again, that is actually a really good, simple language here, right? Like it is the language of complete madness coming in to be like, you're good. Don't look at Instagram anymore. Emmanuel Macron's going to, do you want Emmanuel Macron to offer you a happy birthday today? You're like, no, I don't. Please stop. And it is monstrous in that they don't understand humans. It's not human. Not ragging on these Arabic bird meme dudes. Like if that's working for you guys, like more power. But like it feels like the language from another place, right? So, but yeah, the angels will mess you up. And the thing about the angels that always strikes me is, and I think this is the voluntary path too. They show you a complete finished reality. You're like, got it. You're like, I would like to not be on Instagram. They're like, cool. Your reality is now bird memes. You're like, fuck, it's bird memes for eternity. And they present it as like, it's bird memes for eternity, baby. And we got it figured out. Like we figured out all the pieces. But then if you're like, actually, Instagram is really helpful for me for working this. They're like, oh, other infinite reality, right? There's so many infinite figured out realities. They can all exist, and they're quite happy to put you into whichever one you want to be in, And so the voluntary thing I think kicks in there, where you're like, I don't want to live in bird meme land anymore, man. Like, can I go to something else? And they're like, yeah. There's foxes over here. You like foxes? You're like, no, stop. Just how about my friends talking about things like, oh yeah, that could be that. Yeah, sure. But so that combination of like, you are fated to get something. You're fated to have these interactions, but you can choose what these interactions are.
Learning that you can choose helps, because I think, anyone who's messed around with this stuff has seen casualties, and I think some of the casualties are people that forgot that they had the power to choose. They could say no. You could get what you want, and then say, do you know what? I changed my mind.
Yeah.
I got tripped up on that for a long time. I didn't want to ask for anything in case I got it.
That's a real one. Zamboni, have you had the offer where they're like, can have these things?
I don't think so. Which offer are you talking about?
Oh man, I get this one all the time. This is because I hang around with the devil a lot, but the devil is always like, sure, you want this? You can have it. Just take a look at it. Do you really want it? And lots of you're like, I want to. Honestly, it feels way more like Jesus getting tempted in the desert than I would like it to feel. Like that's actually a good little manual. You know what I mean? It's like, you could be king of the world. You're like, I'm a fucking god. Why are you offering me this? But the the most concrete example I had of this one time was when my son's mom and I moved to Poughkeepsie. There was a moment where we were thinking about buying a house, and the perfect house showed up. Absolutely perfect. Except it would have taken all of our money. We would have been house poor. And there were a couple of repairs that maybe would have been really intense. And it was like, yeah, you can magic up this house that you say you want. Do you really want it? Do you really want all that comes with it? And the answer was no. No. And it was a smart move. Like, it would have been way worse for us if we had gone down that path. And so I think there's some of that too, right? Like, you get what's offered and you get to choose. That was a long walk off a short pier.
Now here we are drowning.
Gotta find a way out.
I can swim a bit, but I can't really swim. So
Yes. Well, this has already been plenty of time. I'm gonna have plenty of editing to do. I don't know how to spell half of these words, so.
Oh man. Oh man. The captioning on this one's gonna be fucking
Oh, it's gonna be
amazing.
trash. It's gonna be such
amazing.
trash. So yeah, we'll see what it ends up being. But this has been truly delightful. I realize now that Melangell, I didn't introduce you at all. I have no idea where, like, clearly you are brilliant. All of the people have heard you being brilliant for the last 2 hours. I know you run a blog. Do you have other things going on? Like, tell the people about it.
I don't have anything going on. I'm mysterious.
Ooh.
I'm having a
Shout
very
out to the mystery tradition. Y'all can wonder.
I am having a very offline time right now. You might be able to find me online. If you find me online, you may ask me 3 questions, but I don't guarantee what the answers will be.
The creation of the Melangell Oracle in this exact moment is like, and y'all, if you're not up on your folklore, 3 questions is you're signing up for some shit. That's pretty good.
But I take it that you guys both have very interesting websites with lots of things that may be of interest to people. I don't do product placement naturally. I'm not American, but I'm doing my best, guys. Help me out here.
10 out of 10. No notes.
Yeah, perfect.
Love it. Well, I know that I, for one, am very interested in this treasure hunt for the 3 questions.
Yeah, me too.
So I know that it seems very interesting. So my real question here is, if I were interested in finding treasure, is this the kind of thing I could ask Geomancy about?
I've heard Geomancy is good for that.
Actually, it literally has several different techniques for finding treasure. Like it's right on the money for that sort of thing. Yes, if you're interested in finding out more about treasure, taking a medieval castle, or what horse you should buy, Geomancy is fantastic for things. We can also turn this very quickly into where do I find wealth in my life, and which car should I buy, and how do I take down that guy at work who is really, blocking everything.
Should I leave the group chat with the guy that's really annoying me in it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's right on the money. And I do want to be clear about that. It's very practical. It's very like, I'm not turning away questions about how do I get rid of the guy who is hassling me in every meeting. Bring them by. I love those kind of questions. We get tactical up in here. But yes, if you're interested in those sort of things, wilkinsbryan.com. Please feel free to book a reading, and I'll be happy to talk with you about any of that. But if you're looking for something that's a little more, I was just thinking with how would I understand like my synastry with my partners, how I connect to people, what my year ahead might be. Which, by the way, oh wait, side note, I'm going to give an actual full-on thing. In my year ahead, Zamboni predicted the exact moment in my chart when I would start getting a ton of new business stuff coming in at work, and also had good recommendations on archetypically how to apply things to it that would make that fruitful rather than being, just a whole bunch of stuff coming in. That literally happened to me in the last couple months, right on the schedule, and I was prepped for it. I had it on my calendar. I was like, this is when it's going to get hot. And my boss at work literally called me up and goes, I can't believe it's so hot right now, because they knew I do crazy stuff. They're like, do you think it's the astrology? I was like, it is. I know for sure. And so ZamboniFunk.com, you can find out more about that kind of stuff.
That's true. At ZamboniFunk.com, you can get a year ahead reading. You can get a 10-minute reading where I'll just sort of like riff for a little bit about one question that you might have. Sometimes I'll fit 2 in there, but I run out of time pretty quick. ZamboniFunk.com is the place for that. If you have questions about synastry with your partner, don't ask me that question. I don't answer that question. There's the boundaries. We gotta have a good container here. I'm happy to talk about your relationship. I'm happy to look at your chart and think about your relationship and your relationship to your relationship. But other people have not consented to me looking at their charts, and so I'm not going to do that.
Very kind, very, very appropriate, very moral. Appreciate this.
Yeah. Synastry is a thing, and it does work. And I'm not going to do that reading, but I'm happy to do relationship readings and also career readings and all type of things. So yeah, go ahead, check it out, ZamboniFunk.com. Beautiful people, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you, Melangell. Thank you, Delicious Brian. It is always a delightfully eccentric time hanging out with the two of you. It's always fun. And thank everybody for being here with us. Peace and blessings, family.